Welcome to my third Factorio train tutorial. This time I'm going to show you everything you need to know about signals. Signals create blocks. A block starts at a signal and ends at the next signal. You can segment your rail lines this way into many pieces. Signals will prevent trains from entering a block which is already occupied by a train. Thus, each block can only contain one train at a time. This shows the first important purpose of signals: crash prevention. If you take a signal into your hand, you will see all the blocks. Every connected piece of the same color represents one block. Signals are also used to create one-way rail lines. This means that, by default, signals let trains only drive one way. Trains can only pass a signal if it's at the right side of the train. You can also work around this by placing a signal on both sides of the track. Normal rail signals have three colors. Green means that the trains are allowed to pass because the next block is empty. This means that there are no trains between this signal and the next one. If the rail signal is yellow, the approaching train won't be able to come to a stop at this signal. A red signal shows that there is a train between this signal and the next signal, which means that the next block is already occupied. Thus, trains have to stop in front of the signal until the next block is empty again. A blinking signal tells you that you made a mistake. To be more precise, the block that starts at the signal also ends at this very same signal, which doesn't make much sense, because a potential train would block itself. This could also mean that there isn't a piece of rail directly next to the signal. This can happen if you remove rails or place signals as a part of a blueprint. Chain rail signals introduce a pretty useful mechanic. They can read the contents of the next signal. So if the next signal, the one at the end of the next block, is red, the chain rail signal will also be red. In this case, the chain rail signal checks not only if the next block is empty, but also if the block after the next block is empty too. You can also link multiple chain rail signals together, as they can also read the contents of other chain rail signals. They are usually used to prevent deadlocks in stations and intersections, as you will see in some examples later in this video. Chain rail signals also have one more color, blue. It will turn blue if there are multiple signals ahead that give conflicting information, like in an intersection where one next signal may be green but another one could also be red. The train will come to a halt if the next signal on its route is red, but it will continue if the next signal on its path is green. Now I'd like to show you some example railway parts that show how signals work in real scenarios. This is a standard rail line. It is used to connect everything together. In this case, it only consists of two parallel rails. Signals are on the right side of each track, or in this case you could also say they are on the outsides of both rails combined. They are regular signals, so trains can drive normally but don't crash into each other. It's generally a good idea to build the signals fairly close to each other. I'd say the maximum distance between two signals should be no more than the length of your longest train. You should have a conform rail width. I usually use two rails of space in the middle, as this is fairly compact, but for more efficiency you could also go higher, as this allows for bigger intersections. These rail lines will bind your entire base together, which means that you could also build some power lines or robot hangers into them and make a blueprint of a titleable piece for later use. The simple two-way rail line connecting two stations features two small breakout points at each station. The entire station and the breakout is one block, which means that only one train can enter the single rail piece at a time, making deadlocks impossible. Signal 2 is red because the next block, which represents the station, is blocked by the train waiting in the station. Signal 1 is green, which means that the train can leave the station without any problems. All signals are on the right hand side, which means that the trains will enter the station from the lower rail and leave it via the upper rail. The rail line between both stations can get segmented further by just adding more rail blocks similar to what you can see here. This will allow for smoother operation once you have a significant amount of trains on this rail line. This scenario adds a bottleneck into the mix. We only want one train at a time to be in a bottleneck, so we make it one big block. Sadly, trains could still enter the bottleneck while not being able to leave immediately, resulting in them waiting in there. This could block trains from the other direction who wouldn't have to wait. Chain signals are perfect in this case, so we replaced the normal signals with chain signals added to entrances. Now trains will only enter the bottleneck if they can leave it immediately. The signals 1 and 4 are used as the exit signals. They will turn green if the block after the bottleneck is free. This means that they will only turn green if the train could immediately leave the bottleneck. The two chain rail signals 2 and 3 are the entrances into the bottleneck. They can read the contents of the next signal, so they will turn green if the bottleneck can be entered safely, but also can be left immediately. This double crossing is used to let two-way rail lines cross each other. First, we need to add some signals to prevent fatal crashes that would look pretty cool, but kill the throughput. But wait, what's this? A train blocking off another train because it couldn't enter the next block? You probably already know what would help in such a situation. Correct! We just need to replace the 4 signals at the entrances through chain signals. But the entire thing is still one big block, which is, again, bad for throughput. Look at how these two trains interfere with each other. This is completely unnecessary, so let's fix that. We just need 4 more chain signals in the middle like that. Now each of the 4 small cross points is its own block. Much better. The signals labeled 1 are the signals for the entrance. They are chain signals because they need to read the contents of the next signals. This means trains can only enter the crossing if they can leave immediately. The signals labeled 2 are the exit signals. Those have to be normal rail signals because they create standard rail blocks with the following rail line. So they will turn green if a train could leave the crossing. The signals labeled 3 are used to break the crossing further up, which allows opposing trains to drive straight through. Opposing trains won't cross each other's path, which means it's unnecessary for them to wait on each other. They are also chain signals to prevent trains who can leave immediately from entering the crossing. With all that knowledge, you can now hopefully understand the signaling of the 3-rail intersection I built in my last tutorial. Generally, it's a good idea to have each cross point being its own block. This will result in a fairly efficient intersection. Also make sure that trains can only enter the intersection if they can also leave it, or at least make sure they can't block any other paths. Now you will probably see the flaw with my 3-way intersection. This one big block which we sadly can't split up any further because it can be impossible to place signals next to a bent track. I could have built it a bit bigger just to get a higher train throughput, but that's something you have to consider yourself. Another possible way to solve this problem would be to use a different rail width, but that's a discussion for a whole different video. Until then, I advise you to check out my other train tutorials or perhaps even my Let's Play series in which I'm currently playing the Factorio campaign. I would also be very happy if you would rate this video and tell me what I could improve for the next one. Also, don't forget to subscribe to get notified about future videos. Until then, I hope you have a nice time playing Factorio, going outside and doing other stuff. See you all next time.